Icebergs. A glint of it is above the surface for all of us to see. However, most of the iceberg is shrouded in mystery beneath the cold, dark waters surrounding it. Today, I will do an iceberg for geographical facts. Some are well known by many, just like the tip of an iceberg. However, even with geography, certain parts are so mysterious and unknown. Let me know if you like this type of presentation. I might do more in the future, depending on that. With that out of the way, let's get started. The border of Afghanistan and China looks rather insignificant, but if you cross the border, you would have to set your clock 3.5 hours ahead. The reason for this is that the PRC has set a universal time zone for the whole country of China, which is the time in Beijing. A country as big as China, with one time zone, would certainly create wacky sunrises and sunsets in the western part of the country. You are likely in the northern hemisphere if you're watching this video. That is because 90% of the world's population resides in the northern hemisphere, while only 10% reside in the southern. California is a state in the United States of America, and it has more people than the entirety of Canada. California has 39.2 million people, while Canada has 38.3 million people. The state of Alaska is the largest by land size in the United States. It's also the westernmost and easternmost state. Part of the Aleutian Island chain extends into the eastern hemisphere, giving Alaska the title of being both western and eastern. In the country of Namibia, the harsh desert-like conditions of its coastline with the Atlantic Ocean make it sparsely populated. But there's a trade-off. Its coastline is made of diamonds. The Orange River near the border with South Africa carries these diamonds downstream and deposits them on Namibia's coastlines and its deserts. You guys have probably heard of what exclaves and enclaves are, but if not, I will explain this to all of you. Exclaves and enclaves are when part of a country is completely surrounded by another country or more countries. One of the most famous examples of this is Kaliningrad, a Russian-controlled territory near the Baltic Sea, surrounded completely by Poland and Lithuania, two members of the European Union and NATO. When we think of the west coast of the US, we think of Los Angeles. However, numerous cities are west of LA that you might not even think of, like Reno, Nevada. Now, let's dive into the deep blue sea. The Black Sea near the Turkish Straits are very well known today, and that's for its immense geopolitical value, which we are not going to talk about. Instead, we are going to talk about the lack of oxygen below its surface. It is anoxic at depth, as the lower and upper levels of the sea do not mix. This creates an environment where shipwrecks at the bottom will be completely preserved, as there is no oxidation process. When the Aztec Empire built their capital city of Tenochtitlan on a lake, they built a highly advanced city for its time. However, when the Spanish colonized the area, they completely destroyed the city and built their capital, now Mexico City. The soft, ancient lake bed mixed with the weight from the massive metropolis known as Mexico City, has created an environment where Mexico City is sinking as much as 20 inches per year. There seems to be no current solution for this issue. Rivers are the cradles of civilization. The Yellow and Yangtze rivers created enormous floodplains that gave the Chinese civilizations its name. However, not everyone is blessed with rivers. Some do not have any at all. Most of these are small island nations, but a huge outlier is Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is the largest country in the world without a single river, which is nearly the size of the whole Midwestern United States. When we think of Antarctica, we think of the huge ice sheet that symbolizes the bottom of our planet Earth. With all that ice, people always think that it snows a ton there, but that is completely wrong. Antarctica is actually a massive desert. At the South Pole, it receives only 2 inches of precipitation yearly, making it one of the Earth's driest, coldest, and windiest places. On February 18, 1979, it snowed in the Sahara Desert, an extremely rare event. The snow was in southern Algeria. It lasted only 30 minutes, and then it quickly melted away. With the Sahara being one of the most inhabitable regions on Earth, it is no surprise that it hasn't snowed nearly at all. But it has, and the brief time frame of it should just show you how rare it is to snow in the Sahara Desert. This part of our world would be lower on the list if it weren't so famous. Challenger Deep is the deepest discovered part of our ocean floor, located in the Mariana Trench near the island of Guam. James Cameron in the year 2012 took a submersible down to this point, which is 36,201 feet, or 11,034 meters below sea level. You could put Mount Everest here, and it would still be underwater. It's truly mind-blowing, but we are just getting started with the depths of our seas. Let's plunge deeper into the depths. Rip currents have been the cause of many horrifying drownings and disappearances near the coast. Rip currents, simplified, are extremely powerful currents of water that flow away from the shoreline. Unless you're an experienced swimmer or I can identify these rip currents, you can easily fall victim to a rip current. Sandy-colored waters past the shoreline, deeper and darker waters, and an abundant movement of water are also signs of a rip current. Be careful out there. Rip currents are very dangerous, and they can cost your life. If you look at a map of light pollution at night over the Korean peninsula, you will see something weird and eerie. South Korea is as bright as a Christmas tree, from fishing boats and huge cities glowing at night. The north, however, is nearly pitch black, with scattered lights around the country. The map makes South Korea look like an island separated from the Asian mainland. I wouldn't go too much into the history of it, but if you wanted to check for yourself, it would paint a clearer picture of the situation. New Orleans has been one of the most important cities in the French Empire's history and now the United States. When the French discovered the land, they were surprised at the lack of settlements around it. The natives knew exactly why they didn't settle the area: flooding. Modern-day New Orleans sits along the banks of the Mississippi River and near Lake Pontchartrain. and it's basically surrounded by water. Downtown New Orleans is on a natural levee barely above sea level. However, the rest of the city is at or beneath sea level, and before the city was settled, they were just swamplands. Those swamplands were drained to expand the city, with no one realizing the geographical nightmares that would plague the area. Hurricane Katrina was so devastating because of this. Lake Pontchartrain flooded, and the water poured violently in New Orleans' bowl shape. A coastal stretch in the Pacific Ocean has wrecked many ships near the United States. It's called the Graveyard of the Pacific. The Pacific Graveyard is at the mouth of the Columbia River, which has no natural delta. Shifting sandbars, dense fogs, reefs, and dangerous tidal rips have wrecked nearly 2,000 ships just near the port city of Astoria in Oregon. Louisiana is on this iceberg again. Like before, it has to do with water. The Mississippi River is a brownish color, and that is because the river is chock full of sediments, which flow down the river and deposits its sediments near the delta of the Mississippi. This gave southern Louisiana floodplains, which sort of protected it from frequent hurricanes in the area. However, the Mississippi is losing that sediment. Artificial levees created on the Mississippi's banks are necessary to prevent flooding, but it has the consequence of destroying the coastline of Louisiana. Fewer sediments are now making their way to the delta, making the low-lying floodplains severely vulnerable to the Gulf of Mexico, eroding the Louisiana coastline. In the future, when these floodplains are eroded and hurricanes are more powerful, New Orleans will not have the protection from the floodplains. Instead, they will feel more direct hits from massive hurricanes, which, if you remember the bowl shape of New Orleans, could have catastrophic consequences. Now it's time to go even deeper. There is a small town in Pennsylvania called Centralia. It looks like a normal, small American town, but it's nearly a ghost town. That's because of a fire. Underground. The area around Centralia is rich in coal deposits, which was and still is one of the most important resources in the world. The coal fire has been burning and expanding underground since 1962. But the reason for the fire is more mysterious. The most popular theory is that the intentional burning of a trash dump near a coal mine started it, but it's not confirmed. This fire will keep growing as coal fires are extremely tough to put out entirely. In World War II, the US dropped Fat Man on Nagasaki, which in turn ended the war. Nuclear bombs were a whole new level of destruction, mostly in the World War II era. However, there is a thought that not many think of. Nagasaki, like most of Japan, was surrounded by mountains. As you would expect, mountains are very good at limiting the sheer power of a nuclear blast. If Nagasaki were on a flat level plain, the destruction could have been much, much worse than it already was. The North Atlantic Current is an ocean current that takes warm waters from the Caribbean and Gulf of Mexico across the Atlantic towards Northern Europe. This current gives cities like London warmth, which is at the same latitude of places like Winnipeg, Canada. Winnipeg is obviously much colder, while London has mild temperatures. This is so deep on the list because of the reality of this ocean current collapsing in the near future. and that could happen if the ocean gets less salty, and it would have dire results. Melting ice caps from Greenland, right near the current path, could do the trick. This would make the climate of the UK more similar to a place like northern Alaska. A chilling thought. In the Andaman Islands, there is an island called North Sentinel Island. Above, it looks like any jungle-covered island, but in fact, it is much, much different. North Sentinel Island is home to the Sentinelese, which is a tribe which is completely disconnected from the modern world we know today. Many people have tried connecting with the tribe, ignoring the warnings of governments and others alike, and have paid with it dearly, and sometimes with their lives. The Sentinelese do not welcome visitors, and they make that extremely clear. India currently administers the island and has agreed to never step foot on it. Its navy also patrols the island 24/7, so that no one can find their way toward the death that would certainly await them on North Sentinel Island. Rivers flood pretty often, and there is no larger example than the Yangtze-Huai River floods of 1931. The Yangtze River is massive, and combined with the sheer population of China, this could have dire consequences. The year of 1931 was one of the wettest and rainiest years in the history of China, with cyclones also rampaging to the coast, and this had the markings of a very catastrophic flood. Other rivers, tributaries, and canals were dangerously high in their water levels. Nearly 180,000 kilometers or 69,000 miles of land was flooded, nearly similar to England and Scotland put together. The death toll was staggering, killing nearly 2 million people, though the sheer scale of the flooding makes it impossible to collect accurate data. The actual number could be much, much higher. Fukushima was a nuclear power plant on the Japanese Pacific coast. In 2011, however, a gargantuan earthquake hit off the coast of Japan, which triggered a massive tsunami that hit Japan's coast like a freight train. However, this is not about the flood or the earthquake, but how the flood caused a nuclear meltdown. The 14-foot high waves destroyed the plant's emergency diesel electricity generators, which is a catastrophic sign for a nuclear power plant. This led to a loss of electricity, which in turn caused a nuclear meltdown. With Chernobyl, Fukushima is now one of the most infamous nuclear disasters, which still affects Japan to this very day. And now, the abyss. On August 21st, 1986, an unexpected explosion happened near Lake Nyos in Cameroon. When a local came after the explosion to return, he started seeing dead livestock. His concern grew as more and more dead livestock appeared. Then they arrived in the town. It looked like the apocalypse. Bodies everywhere, with the sheer mystery surrounding the sudden deaths of all these people and animals. Lake Nyos experienced a limnic eruption. This type of event is triggered when massive amounts of CO2 bundled at the bottom of certain lakes explode, as the pressure created by the CO2 is too great for the lake to hold. These eruptions are extremely complicated, and you should research these to get more information on the sheer death that they can cause. The gas that rises from the lake as a result of the explosion sends a large cloud of poisonous CO2 gas down to the surface of the earth, as the gas is heavier than the air. It's kind of like fog, but instead filled with CO2 poison and death. 1,746 people died as a result of this event, along with more than 3,000 livestock and animals. Plymouth was the capital of Montserrat, a Caribbean overseas territory of the United Kingdom. That was until a historically inactive volcano erupted. Plymouth was built on an old volcanic settlements right in the path of the volcano named Soufriere Hills. When the inactive volcano suddenly erupted in 1995, it sent ash into the atmosphere in a phreatic explosion. The 4,000-strong population of Plymouth evacuated and then returned a few months later. However, that would not be the end of it. Just as people started settling back in, the volcano once again erupted, but this time with a much more destructive mindset. It sent pyroclastic flows speeding down at 60 miles or 100 kilometers per hour down its slopes, which are a mixture of rocks, gas, and super hot ash. The city was buried in a volcanic matter and now is just completely abandoned. The city of Braides is now the de facto capital of Montserrat. In the Far East in Siberia, there is a road known as the Road of Bones. It starts in Yakutsk, one of Russia's coldest cities, and goes to Magadan, a port city on Russia's Pacific coast. The road is called the Road of Bones because of the numerous bodies which were discovered and which were placed right under its path. From 1932 to 1953, Stalin was the head of the USSR and created an insane amount of harsh prisons called gulags. These gulag prisoners were then forced to construct this road in one of the world's most harsh and inhospitable parts, and many perished. It is estimated that up to 1 million died in the process of making this road. Have you ever thought, how far can I get away from everyone on this earth? If you want this to be a tropical getaway, however, you're out of luck. This point is in the middle of the largest ocean in the world, and the isolation here is truly terrifying. Point Nemo, as it's called, is the furthest point from any body of land, either with a population or uninhabited. The closest land to this point is a small Easter island. However, this island is still nearly 2,700 kilometers or nearly 1,700 miles away. Ships, if ever, rarely pass this point. The closest humans to you would not be on Easter Island, but in space. That's right. If you are at this point of the ocean, the astronauts on the International Space Station, when it orbits above you, would be the closest to you. Perhaps the scariest part of this iceberg is, well, not known. If you were to guess, how much of the ocean do you think is explored? Well, here's the answer. 5%. Only 5% of our waters have been explored. The other 95% is shrouded in darkness, mystery, and just darkness. Nobody knows what's down at the horrifying depths of the sea. Deeper points in Challenger Deep, unexplored shipwrecks, unknown sea creatures that stick to the unknown seas and untouched waters of the deep blue sea. Down at these depths, it's 3 things: cold, dark, death. Thank you for watching this video, and I hope to see you for the next one.